And I want to start by kicking it over to Kayla Peterson with SBAC to share a little bit of updates about the Good Neighbor Handbook.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here and being patient with me, jumping from call to call. But it is so good to see all of you. So now what I'm going to do is share my screen if I'm able to, Landon, to be able to show you the Good Neighbor Handbook. Many of you have had the opportunity to view it already. But before I do that, I want to just kind of acquaint everyone a little bit with the Good Neighbor Handbook if you aren't already aware about what it is. So this group worked on this brief, really approachable, really accessible document last year, in the fall of last year. And the whole purpose of the Good Neighbor Handbook is for case management organizations, case managers like CityNet or Good Sam to sit down and work with folks and walk them through this handbook together. And the handbook brings up things that might not otherwise naturally come up in conversation, such as how to handle curfews in a maybe shared living space, or how to handle maybe roommate conflict or housemate conflict, or noise complaints, or working with a landlord, all of which some clients maybe have had different experiences approaching together and maybe don't bring up the conversation on their own already. So what the Good Neighbor Handbook is really designed for is for a case manager to sit down and tackle kind of segment by segment, section by section, walking a client through some of these things in a kind of with an external form, an external document, sort of introducing the conversation. And so what we're going to be doing is Catherine and I will be, over the next several weeks and months, sharing this document in CES case conferencing. Emily Allen, who I believe is on the call right now, has been really gracious to allow us to be able to share that. So we'll be sharing tomorrow and then next week, and then in the youth and veterans case conferencing meetings, just to walk case managers through the document and see what kind of feedback is kind of initially shared on the document. And then what we're hoping case managers are able to do is introduce the document, if they haven't already, to their kind of housing retention case management components when they're visiting their client in their new unit, and being able to sit down and say, okay, can we tackle this section together today? Who do you want to call if this issue arises? To be able to, again, drive forward those conversations that really, really matter when you're acclimating for the first time in a long time, or the first time ever, to a new unit. So what I'm going to do right now is pull up that document. If you give me just a moment, I will share my screen in just a second. Okay. So this is the Good Neighbor Handbook. As you can see, it's sort of designed to be accessible and relatable. It's not just a cold document, because we know that many, many, many folks, when they first get into their unit, are receiving a stack of paperwork. They're looking at so many things, and so many things are new to them, that this isn't just something that we want folks to have and look at one time, or in their first moment of getting to their unit, or finding their space. We want it to be a part of that ongoing case management conversation. So that's really, again, what it's designed for. And this, again, is there to introduce the aspect of the conversation that puts a little bit of the onus on the client. There are other, of course, components to housing retention that it takes a village type of approach. So again, just accessible. It's more about, again, being a good neighbor. There are some other components of a lease that aren't contained in here and might be part of the other documentation that the client receives. So there's different parts: noise levels, taking care of your apartment, taking care of the property, decorations, all of these things that may not come up naturally, or that a case manager, when they're running around working on all of the different pieces of the case management process with a client, might forget to bring up naturally. And so these things help you bring those up in a little bit more of a natural kind of environment. All sorts of different conversations that you might want to have with a client. Some might apply to the client, some might not. But still kind of a universal document to take your client through, regardless of what they might kind of experience. So you might do part one, week 1 or week 2. Part two might come along a little bit later, however you and your clients want to work together. Noise levels, neighbor conflict, like I mentioned. And then if you need help, at the very end of the document, which we'll get to in just a moment, we've got getting to know your neighborhood, getting to know the space around you. We know many clients might be moving out of the space that they normally hung out to a different neighborhood and might need a little bit of support in figuring out what's around them. Where are the grocery stores? Where can they go pick up their mail? All of those components. Finding your local spots, finding a way to get engaged in the community, ways that kind of bring to life a little bit more of the other parts of housing retention, of finding genuine community and a way to spend time with your community. Social media for the common good, advocacy opportunities, thinking about the impacts on your space. Yeah. And then the end is the support team contacts, which I really like as a component. So the client can work with the case manager to identify who are the people when I'm having an issue that might be laid out in this document. Who can I call? Who can I reach out to? Because so much of the work that all of you do in your unique ways is supporting clients once they're housed and making yourself available, but the client's got to reach out to you and make themselves available to you on the reverse side. So this is just that opportunity for clients to be able to know who they can call and to see their community around them in this particular way. So that, in short, is the Good Neighbor Handbook. Of course, we rolled through it pretty quickly, so we didn't have time to read all of the components. So what I'd like to be able to do is, if you're interested in taking a look at the Good Neighbor Handbook and haven't already seen it, please do let me know and I can email it to you. But also, if you're working with case management, hey, I see Rachel's got a copy already waving it in the screen. I love that. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Rachel, to share a little bit about some maybe experiences you've had with it. But if you are already using it, another thing that we'd like to begin doing with this group is going back to the Good Neighbor Handbook and talking about what works. We know that the document, it can be living, it can be refined. We know that nothing is perfect the first go around, and there might be components we missed, or there might be components that don't land well with a client. And we want to be able to go back into that document and fix those things and make it even better, because we want to kind of see this resource be useful. So Rachel, maybe I'll hand it to you in a second after I go to Rob's hand, but I see your hand is up, Rob. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. And I just wanted to thank your team for creating this document. We include all this information in our house rules and our lease agreement. That's a bit overwhelming for a lot of our clients when they're signing the lease agreement, and a lot of it's legalese. This document, I really appreciate how you boiled it down to just common language of this is how you can succeed sort of by following these guidelines. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate the work that's been done on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And again, we want it to be a support to all of the stuff that's already laid out in those lease agreements. We know you're communicating it, but want to make sure that it's as accessible as possible so that it's useful as possible. So Rachel, anything to add or share there? Kind of word from the people who are using it.
Sure, and of course, I just want to piggyback off of what Rob said and say thank you, because this is so nice to have, and it is simple, and so what we're doing is we are printed them for all of the case managers, and they are being sent out with them in their caseload. And so just like our ISPs, they're kind of living documents. We're just going over a little bit at a time, not to overwhelm. Maybe one session, just talk about, the first maybe page only, and just reiterating, what it is to be a good neighbor. And it is helpful. And so, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And as like a little kind of shout out to some of the Westmont interns that we've worked with, they played a large role in really pulling the information together and making it look nice and accessible and pretty, so that it's something that doesn't feel like a drag for case managers to use and doesn't feel like a drag for a client to look at, but something that's actually beautiful. So just a little bit of a shout out to those student interns for playing a really integral role in developing this document. So again, we'll be sharing it with all of you if you need it to work through it with your case management teams, and we'll be sharing it in case conferencing as well. But in a future housing retention meeting, what we'll look for is feedback from all of you on what specific sections we can work on and refine. And I'll be reaching out to some of you as well, like to Rachel, just for specific feedback from case management teams to see what else we can add, change, and shift. But that's just a little bit from us on the Good Neighbor Handbook. And with that, Landon, I'll hand it back to you.